There was a time when my clock radio woke me up every day to WNYC and to the dulcet, wise tones of NPR. And then there came a time, right around the same time that I took myself off of all social media, that news before coffee was putting me in a particularly foul humor, and my husband gently suggested I might find a more pleasant way to wake up, or at least to wake him up. My clock radio's alarm antenna isn't the strongest, nor is it the newest, and so my station choice has always been a bit limited. So now I play a game with myself to see how quickly I can hit the off button each morning so as to limit whatever god awful sound is calling me to the day. This week, however, it started playing Christmas music at 6 a.m. each morning. The first time it happened, I have to admit to being more than a little startled. And Wham's Last Christmas isn't exactly the way that anyone should ever have to wake up. Then later in the week, this week, I walked into Home Depot to get supplies for this weekend's end of season gardening project, and I was confronted by a life-size animatronic Santa swaying his hips with lips that moved, mouthing along to Santa Claus is coming to town. And I have to tell you, friends, it stopped me in my tracks as I considered what in front of my wondering eyes did appear. I will tell you now that I usually have a very strict no Christmas before Thanksgiving rule. And then after Thanksgiving, only then and in a very gradual way do I allow Christmas to kind of be building throughout the coming month of December. As a pastor, my job is to help us stay in the present, to notice the fullness of each of God's appointed days, and to track the seasons for the gift of each day, today, not just the promise of tomorrow. This backfires in any number of ways each season, as December tends to get busier and busier for those of us in the clergy, and before I know it, it's December 24th, and Santa Claus has admittedly not come to underneath of my Christmas tree for those who I love, and it is a scramble of last-minute Christmas shopping and other things reminding me that I should take a little bit more caution before Thanksgiving. I take Advent very seriously, though, with all of its prophecies and its stillness. Advent is 2 weeks away from today, and I take that season with all of its gradual lighting of lights and the build towards Christmas and Christmas Eve. I take it very seriously. I love it, actually. There's something true that is resonant in its anticipation. And like so many of you fellow Protestants, I am an expert at withholding joy until the last possible moment when you really can't contain it anymore. I love the season of anticipation. I don't like Christmas songs when it isn't Christmas. I don't like gingerbread lattes on November 1st. I get very, very grumpy when I have to buy my November book club book or a Thanksgiving sweater to the soundtrack of this year's pop Christmas songs. I don't like that we forget that it's Christmas on December 26th. Or, I don't know, I hadn't. Not usually, anyway. This week, in addition to alarm clock bells ring, yes, I listened, and lip-syncing Santa Clauses, this week, Christmas also came to West End Church. Sure, it is a usual thing for music directors and pastors to start talking about Christmas in mid-October, and Cynthia and I and Sam and Bridget and everyone else for that matter had started this conversation. It's been on paper. This week, though, it started in real life. Cynthia has started recording the musicians, instrumentalists first, starting with some soloists, and then to the choir. She started all the recordings we will need to make the forthcoming days merry and bright. Church in the time of video production takes more time and a whole set of different skills than what we had previously known. And we need a long runway to make church happen. We also know that Christmas Eve is a night so special, so sacred, and also so at risk this year. Living in this transitional time of deepening virus infections, of days getting shorter and of nights longer, of transitions of power, we have much to prepare today, if indeed we are going to be ready tomorrow. Cynthia's on the case. Allison is arranging musical pieces. We've got video footage coming together. Audio tracks are being made, and it will all be stitched together in these coming days as we make this Christmas, our Christmas Eve, from home, as special as possible. But if Christmas is going to happen on the evening of December 24th, it needed to start happening the week of November 8th. I tried to ignore it. Cynthia didn't let me. Thank God for her. I can't ignore it. Standing at Home Depot in front of a life-size, though I will say surprisingly thin, Santa, I had what could have been called an Ebenezer Epiphany or a Grinch's Gladdening, the climax of any movie played on the Hallmark Channel for now till December. I realized not only that I couldn't stop Christmas from coming early, from coming right this very minute, but maybe I shouldn't try it so hard. Maybe we do need Christmas to be like the bad guest who comes early and stays late this year. And while I wish we might make transitions to it with a bit more of an anti-Mame, we need a little Christmas rather than Wham or Bing Crosby, I can't deny that the days are hastening by and the light that right now may feel so far away. Each morning news cycle, each evening, the light that feels so far away is indeed coming to the world. It's coming for you and for me and for all of us. And after my miracle at Home Depot moment, I came home and I told Patrick, and Patrick, who has never met a holiday decoration he doesn't love, that I wouldn't complain about the amount of Christmas decorations in the basement I know he's already organizing. I won't complain that for the next 6 weeks, there won't be a single trip to CVS that he makes from which he doesn't return with a reindeer in a cable knit sweater or some snowman on a dog sweatshirt. I'm going to let the transition from this season to the next happen without my protest. I am holding fast to my no hint of red or green or garland or bauble until after the turkey and leftovers for two are put away. But come Friday the 27th, it's over to him. Go ahead, haul out the holly, sure. Put up the biggest tree we've ever seen. God help me. Transitions are hard. Holidays can be hard. Seasons of transition and seasons of holidays can be even harder as they seem to go on and on with no end in sight. Long ago, the ancient Hebrews came into a promised land after a long and unpleasant wilderness experience. At long last, many years, the ancient Hebrews came into a time of building a new nation, the nation of Israel. They had won the battle. They'd staved off the oppressors, and they came into the promise that God would deliver them. It didn't last as long as they had hoped. The victory they had hoped for would be decisive. They had hoped it would be decisive, but it didn't deliver a mandate at all, but rather only a slim repudiation of how far afield they had gone while following false gods and working out the old ways of their wilderness time. Not long after they arrived in the promised land, they'd barely unpacked. They didn't yet have official offices. They had no bank accounts. The people started rioting. Appointed leaders had been elected, but they were still laying out their plans and trying to build consensus. Not everyone was happy with the election. Turns out giving up some old ways wasn't as easy as everyone had hoped. And truthfully, some of them, perhaps as much as half of them, didn't even want to give up their old ways. And so there they all were, doing what was evil in the sight of the Lord, not honoring all people, not welcoming the stranger, not lifting up the least among them, and certainly not honoring the promise of the promised land. And God had something to teach them still. Their transition from being wilderness people to free people was proving harder than they had planned. Luckily, there was a wise woman who ruled over them. Imagine that, a woman ruling over an ancient people fighting for its survival and for the soul of their newly forming nation. She didn't have an office. She sat under a palm tree to which she had given her name so that people could find her. Oh, you want to see Deborah? She's sitting under the palm of Deborah. And from such a temporary place of leadership, she discerned how to govern her people, and she discerned the will of God that would lead these people to ways of justice and to eventual peace. And this was no mean feat, and her struggles were known too by the early Christ followers, whose vision for reform within the government and oppressive religious regimes of their time, well, they too were met with those who wanted to look backward rather than forward. And to these people, the people we heard about this morning, the Thessalonians, Paul too wrote a letter. Paul wrote a letter of repudiation and of staying straight to the course, and that change and reformation, well, it's hard. It will take some time. Don't fall asleep. He writes to them that you know when light will fully come. You do not know when light will fully come. So stay awake and keep vigilant, stay sober, and encourage one another. This is why Paul's such a great pastor. He says, encourage one another to build up one another. Don't tear anyone down. Don't belittle the one who doesn't agree with you. But for God's sake, stop the bullying and the terrorizing. Admit the truth. Come to faith. Stop believing that your own success will only come if you hold others down. Put away your guns. Live in hope. Keep faith. Goodness will come to those who are good, and rightness will come by those who are just. Paul knew how difficult transitions are. Deborah was a leader in transition. And these leaders tell tales of caution and of concern for their people. They stay in the present of their day. They stay with each day, but they also know that a new day is dawning. And they know that that day will bring justice for all, that some will not like. And they know that that day too will be hard won. And it may come as a surprise. And they know it will not be easy. And we know this too. And we too can keep the faith. And I too can encourage you. And Bridget too can tell you to have hope. And Cynthia will make music to raise all our spirits. For hope is alive. It is coming with a new day. 40 days from this day until Christmas Day. 47 days until a New Year's Day. A new year. 66 days until an inauguration day. The real number you want is one I cannot give. I wish I knew the number of days until the pandemic is over. I'd love to tell you the days until we gather again in our sanctuary. I wish I knew the days until a reliable vaccine, and I wish I knew when we might return to some new way of living that we've learned how to do. But I can't. I am no prophet, though I wouldn't mind if my office was under a palm tree and you found me by saying, oh, go look under the palm of Will. That could be nice. But again, that's not this day. And yet here we are. We are all here in a time and in times of transition. Maybe you don't need a life-size lip-syncing Santa to help you get through this moment, but if you do, well, you know where to find one. And these days may feel long, and these nights may feel bleak. And so if you need a few extra twinkly lights, no one will blame you. Patrick would be happy to advise. Take caution and keep your faith. Guard your hope like your Christmas stocking depends on it. Keep watch and keep awake. You are needed for this day and for the day that is coming. For a light is coming to the world, and the lion shall lie down with the lamb, and a little child shall lead them. Truly, God has made this promise to us and to all generations. Amen.